Hi, my name's Marceline, and this is the year my sister kicked me out of Christmas because I'm just a janitor. Not because I caused a scene, not because I forgot to RSVP, but because I didn't fit the image she wanted to present. They smiled for family photos while I stood outside, pie in hand, wearing the coat I gave her. The same coat she once called too cheap to wear in public. I paid her tuition. I paid their mortgage. I kept the lights on, quietly. But the moment I stopped paying, I wasn't family anymore. And that's when I decided to stop being invisible. What happens when the person you've been funding pretends you don't exist? What would you do if you were me? I pulled up to my parents' house just before 6, gripping the pie dish on the passenger seat like it was the only thing holding me together. The lights on the roof blinked in rhythm, synchronized and perfect. Nothing like how I felt. There were 2 catering vans in the driveway. 2. So much for just family this year. I parked 2 blocks down, same as always. Mom had a thing about guest parking making the front lawn look messy. As I walked toward the house, the smell of clove and roasted ham drifted into the air, blending with the sharp cold of December. I adjusted my jacket, a plain navy windbreaker, with my work badge still clipped to the zipper. I hadn't had time to change after my shift ended at 3. It was either bake the pie or iron something festive. I figured the pie would matter more. Apparently, I figured wrong. Delilah stepped out onto the porch the moment she saw me. Her eyes went straight to the badge, then flicked up to my face like she'd just spotted an uninvited reporter. "Hey, could you, use the back entrance?" she said, keeping her voice low and smile frozen. I stared at her. "What?" "The back door," she repeated, glancing over her shoulder. "Dorian's family is already here. I just think it's better if they don't see you in that. You know how image-conscious they are." I stood there, pie in hand, not moving. Her words didn't hit me all at once. They trickled in slowly, like a leak you don't notice until the carpet's soaked. "I'm your sister," I said. No anger, just facts. Delilah shifted, clearly uncomfortable. "It's not about that. You always help in the kitchen anyway. I thought it would just be easier." That's when Mom appeared. Perfect timing, as always, when someone needed rescuing, from me. "Marceline," she said with that bright, brittle tone she used on Facebook Live, "Delilah's under a lot of pressure tonight. Just help from the kitchen, like you always do. Let's not create tension, okay?" Like I always do. The words landed harder than they should have. Like I was an employee who forgot her name tag, not someone who'd once donated plasma to keep our lights on. I looked down at the pie, pecan, with toasted bourbon glaze, and handed it over. "Here," I said. "Enjoy." Mom took it like I'd just delivered a catering order. No hug, no thank you, nothing. Behind them, through the glass door, I could see Dorian's parents laughing with Dad by the fireplace. The whole house glowed, but none of that warmth reached the porch. I turned around and walked away. By the time I reached my car, the cold had crept through my jacket, but I hardly felt it. I sat there in the driver's seat, engine off, hands on the wheel, just breathing. They made room for caterers, valet, photographers, but not me. The driveway was for people who mattered. I remembered the tuition transfer I made last September, $4,500 from my savings. Double shifts, no vacation days, eating cereal for dinner so Delilah wouldn't have to pause her pre-law semester. I never asked her to thank me. I just didn't think she'd erase me. A thought pushed through, slow and steady. I'm the janitor they don't want in the family photos. But I paid for the backdrop. My phone buzzed once with a text from a coworker, holiday memes, and a "hope you're doing okay." I didn't respond. I just sat there, watching the frost grow on the windshield. At some point, I pulled out of the neighborhood. I didn't rush. This was the last time I'd show up for people who only noticed me when something broke. I didn't even make it past the stop sign at the end of the block before I turned the car around. Not because I wanted back in. That part of me had already gone quiet. But I'd left the pie behind. No, not the one I handed to Mom. The other one. The backup I'd kept in the passenger seat, just in case Delilah forgot to make room for mine in the fridge like last year. I wasn't going to eat it. I couldn't. Not after that. So I parked again, this time farther down, behind the neighbor's hedges where no one would notice. The air had turned sharper. I wrapped my arms across my chest and walked toward the back of the house, the kitchen side. Quiet, careful, like I'd been trained to move around them unseen. When I got to the porch, one of the caterers cracked the door. I handed the pie over without saying anything, just gave a nod. He thanked me with a puzzled look. I guess I didn't look like a guest. Or maybe I did, just not the right kind. Instead of walking off, I hesitated near the entryway, just outside the dining room, where the light spilled through the curtains. I stayed in the shadows and listened. Inside, the clinking of glasses and that too polite laughter filtered through. I heard Dorian's mother, light voice, southern accent, ask, "Is that your sister, the girl by the side door?" Delilah didn't even pause. "Oh no," she said, sounding sweet and casual, like she was brushing lint off her sleeve. "She's extended family, grew up around us, not really close." Not really close. I didn't breathe. Just stood there, perfectly still. I felt my hands go cold. My feet were already numb, but this, it sank lower. Extended family. She could have said co-worker, and it would have landed softer. But sister? That word had vanished. I stepped back from the window. My heart wasn't racing. It wasn't breaking. It just steadied. Like a decision had settled inside me without asking for permission. A few minutes later, one of Dorian's relatives, some uncle or maybe a cousin, stepped out to smoke. He glanced at me, gave me a little nod, then held out his empty wineglass. "You mind grabbing me a top off?" he asked. I blinked. "Excuse me?" He smiled. "Sorry, are you one of the staff? The caterers or janitorial crew maybe?" The irony hit so precisely, I almost laughed. But instead, I took the glass, carried it inside, set it on the kitchen counter. Didn't say a word. No one noticed me come in. No one noticed me leave. I walked out through the back door again, past the trash bins, and down the icy path toward the street. As I reached the edge of the driveway, I glanced back one last time at the house glowing with all the false warmth of curated hospitality. In that moment, I understood something with crystal clarity. I wasn't a member of this family. I was a fixture, a reliable pair of hands, background. And when background starts to speak, people get uncomfortable. I crossed the road, got into my car, and shut the door gently behind me. The engine hummed to life, but I didn't drive off right away. I sat there, gripping the wheel with one hand, the other resting on the fabric seat that still smelled faintly of cinnamon and cleaning solution. The kind of smell you only notice when the chaos dies down. I whispered to myself, barely loud enough to register, but I heard it anyway. They only see what makes them look better, and I never will. Back at my apartment, I didn't even bother locking the door right away. I just stood there for a minute, letting the silence settle in. No hum of chatter, no clinking glasses, no faint echoes of forced laughter. Just my fridge's low whine and the creak of the floor when I stepped inside. The place was small, 4 walls and a window that overlooked the parking lot, but it was mine. A leftover sandwich from 2 nights ago sat untouched on the counter. I took off my jacket, peeled off the shoes that still smelled faintly of industrial soap, and tossed my keys onto the table. Then I walked over to the little tree I'd bought from a hardware store clearance bin. It was fake, barely 3 feet tall, and still had the plastic price tag dangling from one of its bent branches. I sat on the floor, leaned back against the edge of my couch, and opened my phone. One notification after another. New posts, new comments, tagged photos. Curiosity got the better of me. I tapped through. There they were. Delilah in her red velvet dress, standing beside Dorian, both glowing like a Hallmark commercial. My parents smiling in the background, wine glasses raised. There were shots of the food, the matching napkins, The dessert table with the pie I'd brought, carefully uncredited. I wasn't in a single photo, not even a blurry one. It didn't hurt in the usual way. It just felt expected. Like being cropped out was just the unspoken family policy. I closed the app and placed the phone face down. The silence returned, but this time it invited something else. Memories. Not the sweet kind people post for Throwback Thursday, but the type that stay buried because they're heavier than they look. I was 12 when I first understood where I stood. Delilah had won a spelling bee. Mom hosted a full dinner to celebrate. Balloons, a cake from that overpriced bakery downtown. She even invited the pastor and his wife. That same week, I placed second in an essay contest run by the city sanitation department. Something about environmental awareness. No one said a word. I'd brought home the certificate, stuck it to the fridge with a magnet, and watched it slowly get covered by grocery lists and pizza coupons. At dinner a few nights later, I tried to talk about it. Dad had interrupted me mid-sentence, said, "Let Delilah speak first. She has more important updates." That was the night I stopped bringing things home. Back in the present, I stood up and walked to my desk. Pulled open the drawer where I kept old tax files and scanned receipts. Near the bottom was a thin folder, one I hadn't looked at in months. Inside was a copy of the first payment I ever made toward Delilah's college tuition, $500, wired directly to the university's account. I'd worked 2 overnight shifts to make that happen, skipped lunches, borrowed gas money from a coworker, and still made it on time. No one ever asked who paid. No one wanted to know. As her semesters piled up, so did my hours. I took on back-to-back shifts, picked up extra gigs cleaning Airbnbs, even started a side YouTube channel, cleaning tutorials, night shift routines, budget cooking in a janitor's kitchenette. It took off more than I expected. Not viral, but steady. That money didn't go toward vacations or new clothes. It went to books she never thanked me for. Rent she never mentioned. Wi-Fi that powered the FaceTime calls where she told her friends our parents were getting her through school. She never said my name. I walked back to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. The cup had a chip on the rim, but I knew where to sip. I leaned against the counter and let my eyes drift toward the front door. That house almost wasn't theirs anymore. 2 winters ago, after Dad's last business closed and the bills started stacking up, they nearly lost it. I'd overheard Mom on the phone, begging the bank for an extension. That night, I sold my car, my only real asset, and wired $12,000 to cover the mortgage arrears. The bank statements listed my name, but in the family group chat, Mom wrote, "We were blessed just in time. God provides." And I let her have that, because saying otherwise would have made me look like I needed credit. I didn't. I just didn't want to be invisible. I carried the water to the couch, sat down, and opened my laptop. The screen glowed as it came to life. My desktop wallpaper was a picture of a blank whiteboard, clean, empty, ready. I opened a document and typed one sentence. I was never the disappointment. I was just the one they never truly looked at. I didn't know yet what I was going to do next. But whatever it was, it wouldn't be silent anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the couch with my laptop screen still glowing, the cursor blinking like it was waiting for me to type something else. But I had already written what mattered. I had nothing more to add. Not yet. By the time the sun finally came up, casting a faint orange stripe across the window blinds, I had made one decision. I wasn't going to beg to be seen anymore. If they wanted to erase me, I'd give them something they couldn't pretend wasn't there. That afternoon, I went through my closet. Not because I was reorganizing or purging clothes like the influencers always suggest. No, I was looking for something. Tucked in the back behind old uniforms and a spare winter coat was a gift bag I'd never given. Inside was the laptop I'd bought Delilah for her sophomore year. It had been on sale, and I'd used part of my first YouTube payment to get it. She needed something lighter, faster for her internship applications. At least, that's what she'd said. She never asked where it came from, just assumed. I powered it on. The password was still saved, my old email tied to the purchase. I opened the browser, out of habit more than anything, and saw her Instagram page open in one of the tabs. There she was, holding that same laptop in her arms, posted 2 nights ago. The caption read, "He knows me so well. Thank you, Dorian." I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the trackpad for a long time. Not because I was shocked, but because I wasn't. Not even a little. I closed the laptop slowly. Then I picked up my phone. A new notification pinged from a group photo I had been tagged in. Well, not me, technically. Just the top of my head, partially cropped, in the corner of a wide shot of the Christmas table. Everyone smiling, me near the kitchen doorway, blurry, an accident of framing. My name wasn't listed. No one commented asking where I was. They had edited me out so cleanly, I felt like a ghost who never died. As I was setting the phone down, it buzzed again. A message, Aunt Judith. "Your mom said you didn't feel like joining the party this year. Hope everything's okay. You were missed." I blinked. The wording wasn't what hurt. It was the certainty, the casual lie, the rewrite of reality. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Instead, I opened my notes app and typed one sentence. They rewrite the script while I'm still acting in the scene. It wasn't dramatic. It was a fact. That evening, I sat at my desk and drafted an email. I didn't rage. I didn't accuse. I attached a PDF, a summary of every tuition payment I had made since Delilah's freshman year. Clear, itemized, date-stamped, no commentary, just data. In the subject line, I typed, "Just so you know." And in the body, "Thought you should be aware of who actually paid for your Wi-Fi." Then I scheduled it. To send 1 week later. Not immediately. Let it sit. Let it land at the right time, like a subtle ripple before a shift. After closing the draft, I logged into my YouTube dashboard. One of my recent videos, Cleaning Routine, Overnight Hospital Shift, had just passed 2 million views. I read through the comments. "You remind me to stand tall in my small job." "My mom's a janitor too. You make her feel seen." "You changed how I talk to the custodial staff at my kid's school. Thank you." I didn't cry, but I did smile. It wasn't pride. Not yet. Just a quiet exhale. The kind that comes when someone, somewhere says, "I see you." I whispered to the screen, "They can erase my name, but they can't unwrite the receipts." I looked at the date on the corner of my screen. December 26th. I set an alarm on my phone for January 1st, not to ring in a new year, but to make a decision, one that had been forming, quietly, ever since someone handed me a wine glass and mistook me for the help. This time, I'd be choosing myself, and I wouldn't need permission. I didn't hear the alarm when it went off on New Year's morning. My body was awake before my phone even buzzed. That kind of stillness, the kind that arrives when a decision has finally landed, doesn't need reminders. I got up, made coffee the way I always do, cheap beans, no cream, and stared out the window at the quiet street below. A new year, but not a new me. Just a clearer one. That afternoon, I was halfway through mopping the kitchen floor when my phone lit up with a text. From Dad. I hadn't heard from him since before the holidays. "Let it go, kid. Don't make this bigger than it is. She's young. You know how Delilah gets." "No. How are you?" "No. I'm sorry." Just a tap on the shoulder from a man too scared to stand between a fire and the one who said it. I read it twice, maybe 3 times. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I did. Completely. It was the same soft pressure he'd always used to keep me in my place. Passive, quiet, and expected to disappear so others could remain comfortable. I didn't reply. I didn't argue. I just deleted the message and dropped the mop into the bucket. Later that evening, I found myself driving. No destination, just reflex. My hands knew the way. I pulled onto the same street I'd grown up on, watched the familiar porch lights flicker on, one by one. Their house still looked exactly the same, warm and composed, like a stock photo for a holiday catalog. The laughter reached me before the headlights did. Not loud, but just enough to know someone had something to celebrate. I parked across the street and left the engine running, heater humming. I reached for the coat on the passenger seat, an old camel-colored wool piece I'd given Delilah back in college when she came home freezing without a winter jacket. She said she loved it, said it felt like something a real lawyer would wear. I found it months later, tossed in a bag marked for donation. I pulled it tighter around me now. It didn't fit perfectly anymore, too loose in the shoulders, worn at the seams. But it was mine again, and maybe it always had been. I got out and stood across the street, hands in my pockets, breath fogging the air. I didn't go to the door. I didn't need to. I just stood there, watching the silhouettes move behind the curtains. Dad in his recliner. Mom pacing with a wine glass, probably telling someone a story where I was the troubled one. I didn't feel small anymore. I felt separate, and that difference mattered. Back in the car, I opened my email and scrolled down to the draft I'd been working on for days. It wasn't long, just 3 lines and a PDF attachment. Subject, no longer invisible. Body, effective immediately, all future tuition support has been terminated. See attached for payment records. I clicked send. There was no dramatic music, no tremor in my fingers, just a subtle shift, like pulling a thread from the hem of a garment you've worn too long. It was done. Driving home, the streets were quiet. Boise always fell into this sleepy, breath-held silence on nights like this, right after fireworks and before the new resolutions started sounding hollow. I pulled into my building's lot, climbed the stairs, and found a small white envelope poking out of my mailbox. No return address, just my name, written in handwriting I vaguely recognized. I opened it once I was inside, coat still on. It was from a woman I used to work with at the hospital, one of the senior janitors who retired last fall. She'd followed my cleaning channel. "You made me feel proud of what I did. I used to avoid telling people what I used to do. Now I show them your videos." I pressed the letter against my chest. No tears, just a long, steady inhale. This was validation not rooted in guilt or manipulation. This wasn't someone trying to shape a narrative around me. This was someone who saw me, exactly as I am, and said, "Keep going." I sat down at my desk, phone buzzing again. I glanced at the screen. Delilah. One text. "What did you do?" I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I set the phone face down and walked to the kitchen, poured another cup of coffee, and took my time drinking it. The coffee had gone lukewarm in my hands by the time the sun slipped through the blinds. I'd left the phone on the counter, untouched, face down, still vibrating every hour or so with another call or message. I didn't need to look. I already knew what was coming. By 8:13 a.m., the first real crack showed. Delilah's school account had sent out an automatic alert. Payment failure. No active payer listed. Access to the course portal suspended pending tuition resolution. I wasn't there to see her reaction, but I could imagine it, wide-eyed, half-dressed, calling the registrar, trying to blame it on a system error. Maybe she even cursed at a poor student assistant who didn't deserve it. Either way, the result was the same. I'd pulled the plug, clean, final. Later that morning, I walked down to the corner market for more coffee grounds. The air was brittle. My coat, zipped up to my chin, did little to stop the sting. As I stood in line behind an elderly man debating between 2 brands of crackers, my phone buzzed again. A number I recognized. I let it ring. The moment I got home, I saw the notification I'd been waiting for. She'd posted, on her story, a close-up of her coffee mug, her manicured hand gripping it just tightly enough to show tension. The caption read, "Some people love watching you fall, especially when they helped you climb." I stared at it for a long moment, jaw set. She was throwing the first stone while pretending to be the one bleeding. What she didn't expect, though, was someone to throw it back. I clicked through. The comments were already rolling in under an older post from her, an image from earlier that week, showing her in a deep green dress at a New Year's Eve dinner. Caption: Gifted. He knows me so well. That dress. I knew it instantly. The shimmer in the fabric, the cut of the waistline. I remembered steaming it carefully 2 years ago, making sure there were no wrinkles for her internship interview. I bought it with a store coupon and tip money from 2 overtime shifts. She never thanked me for it. Now it was rebranded as some grand romantic gesture from a man who barely knew her wardrobe. And that's when the first comment hit. Wait, isn't this your sister? It came with a screenshot. My face, paused mid-frame from one of my cleaning videos, recognizable now. My handle tagged. The internet never misses. Then another. Didn't you say you were on scholarship? A third. This feels messy. The spiral had begun. Meanwhile, I sat on my couch, freshly showered, wrapped in the same robe I'd had for years. I opened my YouTube analytics. Numbers climbing. A new wave of subscribers from a Reddit thread I hadn't known existed. One comment stood out. I used to be ashamed of working night shifts. You changed that. Another. I sent your video to my daughter. She cleans hotel rooms between nursing classes. You made her proud. I closed the laptop. I wasn't doing this to prove anything to Delilah or to our parents. I didn't need their approval anymore. But their silence, their calculated, polished, cold silence, had cost them something they couldn't buy back. Dorian hadn't said a word yet. He hadn't posted, hadn't commented. But I noticed he'd unfollowed her on Instagram. Small things speak volumes. Then, as I started wiping down my desk, my phone buzzed one more time. Dorian, just his name. No message yet, no context. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering but unmoving. I didn't know if I'd answer, but for once the choice was mine to make. The name still hovered on my screen long after the buzz faded. Dorian. I didn't touch it. Not because I was afraid of what he'd say, but because I already had a feeling I knew. Whatever version of events Delilah had shared with him was probably unraveling by now. Slowly, quietly, the way half-truths tend to fall apart under their own weight. I left the phone face down again, walked back to the sink, and rinsed the last coffee cup. I wasn't cleaning for comfort anymore. I just needed movement, something to fill the space that used to be silence. The call came around noon the next day. Delilah. Again. This time, I answered. Her voice hit me immediately, sharp, high-pitched, already breathless. What the hell is wrong with you? I didn't say a word. You cut off my tuition? Without even telling me? Are you serious right now? What kind of person does that to their own sister? Still, I waited. Let her keep going. You just blindsided me. I had meetings lined up, deadlines, internship prep. You've ruined everything. Do you even care what this does to me? I let her spiral for 20 seconds, maybe more. Then I cut in, calm as ever. That's funny, I said. You didn't use the word sister when you were talking to Dorian's mother. Remember that? Silence. Then came the tone I knew too well. The switch flip, the performance. Look, I was trying to protect you. You know how people judge. It wasn't personal. I almost laughed. You mean it wasn't personal when you called me extended family? When you let me stand outside while you played hostess with the dress I bought and the degree I paid for? You're being dramatic, she snapped. This isn't about a dress. This is about you being petty and vindictive. Delilah, I said evenly, you're not owed what you erase. She hung up. Not slammed, not dramatic. Just a soft click, which somehow stung more. A few hours later, the group messages started. I wasn't in them, but I saw the ripples. Screenshots forwarded from cousins. She's going through something, probably mental burnout. From my aunt. Don't believe what you're seeing online. She's making us look like monsters. Even Mom chimed in. We've always supported her. This must be about something deeper. I'll call her privately. They never did. What they did do was quietly rally behind Delilah. Aunts, uncles, even second cousins I hadn't spoken to in years began unfollowing me, one by one. No confrontation, no questions. just the soft dismissal of people choosing comfort over truth. By the next morning, my DMs were full of strangers. And then, one message, different from the rest. I was there that night. I saw what happened. I just didn't know how to step in. Yorha. I blinked at the name. Yorha. Delilah's old college roommate. She followed with a photo. It was from Christmas Eve, me standing near the coat rack, holding the pie dish. Face half-turned, mid-step, expression unreadable. She'd taken it without me knowing. The caption read, "She looked like she wasn't even invited to her own family." I stared at that image longer than I expected. Not because it hurt, but because, for once, someone captured the truth without needing me to explain it. I didn't reply. I typed "thank you," then deleted it. Typed again. I didn't expect anyone to notice. Deleted that too. Instead, I uploaded a new video to my channel. No caption, no hashtags, just the thumbnail. A table being wiped clean in slow motion. Yorha's photo, slightly blurred, resting at the corner of the frame. No commentary, no explanation, just presence. I posted it and shut off my phone. For the first time since this started, I didn't care who was talking about me, because finally, someone was starting to see me. The day of the meeting came with gray skies and a chill that settled into my bones before I even stepped out of my apartment. I dressed deliberately, not fancy, not sloppy, just solid. Dark jeans, black turtleneck, a wool coat I'd bought for myself on clearance 5 years ago. It still fit. That felt like a quiet win. By 9:50 a.m., I was parked 2 blocks from the cafe. Not out of shame, just habit. I sat there for a few minutes, watching people come and go. Couples with strollers, students with earbuds, a man in a wrinkled suit holding a coffee too tight. Boise moved on as if nothing had cracked. At 10 sharp, I walked in. They were already seated. Arlene on the right, arms crossed. Delilah in the middle, stone-faced. And Dad, Luther, flipping through a menu he had no intention of ordering from. No one stood up, no hugs, just polite silence, like I was a vendor they were waiting to scold. The table was set with quiet hostility. A leather-bound album rested near the sugar packets, a half-eaten croissant pushed aside, and a folder of papers that looked freshly printed. I didn't need to guess what was inside. Their version of control always came in packets. I sat, calm, still. Arlene folded her hands like she was preparing for a deposition. "We wanted to talk calmly," she began, her voice clipped and unnaturally sweet. "This has gone too far." I didn't respond. She pushed the photo album toward me. "We updated the family memories. Thought you should have a look." I opened it out of reflex more than curiosity. Graduations, holidays, cookouts, birthdays, page after page of curated smiles. And I was in only 2 of them. Once at Delilah's college send-off, blurred in the background near the kitchen counter. The second, a cropped image at my uncle's wedding, where half my face was missing. I closed the book slowly and looked up. "You did a good job," I said, voice flat. "Almost looks like I was never part of this family." Delilah leaned forward. "That's not the point. We're here to find a solution, to move forward." "Forward for who?" I asked. Arlene sighed, trying to keep her tone neutral. "This bitterness doesn't suit you. You've always been quiet, responsible. Let's get back to that." That word, responsible, landed heavier than she realized. It wasn't praise. It was an expectation. A leash. I reached into my bag and pulled out a white envelope, placed it directly in front of Delilah. I brought something too. Inside were copies of every tuition payment I'd ever made, statements from the bank when I covered the mortgage, screenshots of her Instagram post about the dress. On top of the stack, a letter. It read, "Visibility isn't something you earn. It's something you stop giving away. No dramatics, no raised voice." I let the paper do the speaking. They flipped through the pages. Arlene's mouth moved slightly, like she wanted to say something but couldn't find a script. Dad looked at the table like it might rescue him. Delilah's expression didn't crack. but her knuckles went white as she gripped the envelope. Finally, Arlene broke the silence. "So, this is it? You're just going to walk away?" I nodded. "I was never invited to stay. I was tolerated." Delilah's tone sharpened. "You'll regret this when the world forgets about you." I stood slowly, buttoning my coat. "I don't need to be remembered by people who never saw me to begin with." I walked out. No slamming chairs, no tears. Outside, the wind had picked up. I paused on the sidewalk for a second, letting the cold bite into my cheeks. Then I heard it. A small voice, maybe 6 or 7 years old. "Mom," the girl said, tugging her mother's coat. "That's the lady from the video. She cleans like magic." Her mom smiled awkwardly. "Yes, honey, I think that's her." I smiled, for real this time. Not out of vindication, just relief. Like something long overdue had finally settled. Not everyone has to clap when you leave the table. Sometimes it's enough just to stand up. The wind followed me all the way home from that cafe, rustling the hem of my coat like it had something more to say. I stepped into the apartment, dropped my keys on the counter, and stood still long enough to feel the quiet again. It was different now, less like a void and more like space, the kind you finally learn how to live in. 2 weeks passed like molasses. I didn't receive any calls. No one from the family followed up. Not Luther, not Arlene. Delilah's name never lit up my phone again. And honestly, that silence felt earned. I woke up one morning, mid-January, still dark outside, and everything felt settled. I boiled water for tea instead of coffee, left the blinds closed. As I passed the envelope I'd left on the bookshelf, the one from the cafe meeting, I didn't flinch this time. I just nodded to it. A quiet agreement between me and the version of myself who wrote it. No one had opened it since. No one needed to. Its weight had already shifted something in the room. I checked my phone out of habit. No notifications. I scrolled aimlessly. Somewhere in the feed, I noticed a post from a mutual friend. A blurry group photo with a vague caption. "Life update. Some of us just need to reset." Delilah was in the background. Hood up, no makeup, not posing. Just small. The post said she'd taken a leave from school. "Focusing on mental clarity," they wrote. I didn't feel vindicated, but I didn't feel responsible either. Whatever came next for her, she'd have to own it. Just like I had to own what came after I stopped financing her illusion. That afternoon, I got an email from the local community center. Subject line, "Your voice matters." They'd seen my cleaning series, particularly the one where I filmed a night shift breakdown and quietly fixed a broken locker door with duct tape and calm. The message was simple. "We're launching a skill-building series for low-income teens. Would you be interested in leading a session?" I stared at the screen for a while, not because I didn't want to say yes, but because I'd never pictured myself being invited for something I hadn't begged to be part of. I wrote back, "Yes. Let me know what you need." Then I pulled out my old notebook and scribbled down a title for the session, "What They Don't See." Later that week, I visited the same diner I'd gone to right after Christmas. The place hadn't changed, still smelled like burnt coffee and fried eggs. The same waitress was there too, gray ponytail, tired eyes, wiping down the counter with more intention than urgency. She recognized me right away. "You're that girl from YouTube," she said, pointing her cloth at me. "The one who makes janitor work look like art." I smiled. "I just film what I do." She sat down across from me, no hesitation. "You made me feel okay about still doing this job at 52. For the longest time, I wouldn't even tell people what I did. Now I show them your channel and say, that's real work." We sat there for 10 minutes. No camera, no selfies. Just 2 women in the same uniform, one digital, one literal, sharing a moment neither of us had to explain. When I got home, I filmed a new video. No music, no editing. Just me cleaning the entryway of the community center where I'd be teaching next week. Scrubbing baseboards, replacing trash liners, straightening chairs. At the end, I set up the chairs in a circle, one by one, deliberately. Voiceover came later, soft but certain. I used to think I had to earn my seat at the table. Now I build new tables, and I clean them myself. The screen faded to black, and the sound of a mop gliding over tile carried us out. Before we end, let me leave you with this. For a long time, I thought being silent was the same as being strong. I believed that if I just kept showing up, kept giving, kept holding it all together, eventually someone would notice. But the truth is, love that demands your silence isn't love. It's control. And loyalty without recognition slowly turns into resentment. If you've ever found yourself erased in a room you helped build, please know this. Your worth isn't measured by who invites you to sit. Sometimes, walking away isn't about giving up. It's about choosing peace over performance. I'm not sharing this because I want pity. I'm sharing it because I want someone, maybe you, to know that it's okay to stop waiting for the applause that may never come. You can build your own table. You can sit at it alone if you need to, but do it with pride. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from family, not out of anger, but out of survival? Have you ever been the one behind the scenes, never fully seen? If this story touched something in you, drop a 1 in the comments or tell me what city you're watching from. If it didn't resonate with you, I respect that too. Tell me why. I want this to be a space for honest voices. And if you found value in this story, if it made you feel less alone or more understood, please consider subscribing to the channel. I'll be sharing more stories that speak to the quiet strength inside people like us. People who have carried more than anyone ever realized. Because sometimes the strongest voice in the room is the one that finally speaks.